Legal disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. With that being said, I do not claim ownership of any copyrighted material featured in my videos, and I also don't make these videos with the intention of profiting off of them.
Update. November 14th, 2009. People have been emailing me a lot, asking me about exactly what happened in 1999. I'll get to that. As you might have guessed, those weird TV shows I saw broadcasted on Channel 21, they were being used as a front to attract kids, victims, to Mr. Bear's house. What Mr. Bear... No, that sick showrunner of Channel 21 did. It shocked the entire town. So we left off at my dad driving me to Caledon, along with the address to Mr. Bear's house that he provided on the broadcast. The house was actually in the outskirts of the town, in the open farmland. It appeared to be quite an old farmhouse. I'd guess it was built sometime around the turn of the century. The windows were all boarded up, and it appeared to be in a serious state of disrepair. As we approached the house, I recall my dad checking over and over again, making sure he didn't get the wrong address, goofily gawking at the house in a state of confusion. And then the door opened. I expected Mr. Bear to be the one to come out and greet us, but to my surprise it was, instead, an OPP officer behind that door. To those of you who aren't from Canada, or specifically the Ontario province, there are provincial law enforcement. When I asked if that was Mr. Bear's house, I could see the officer's face wince up with the slight murmur of, "Oh God," under his breath. I remember the officer then had a hushed conversation with my dad. Hushed enough that I couldn't hear, at least. And when I asked to hear what was going on, he just told me to go back in the car and wait for him. And then we just went home. Dad was very quiet the whole drive home. I felt something strange had happened. My dad never told me what happened. Not for a while. In hindsight, he probably wanted me to forget about Channel 21, which admittedly wasn't all that hard for me to do since Channel 21 never aired again after that summer. And when I'd ask about it, he just never acknowledged its existence. I think it was the year I started high school that he finally told me what really happened. I guess I remembered Channel 21 out of some form of nostalgia and asked my dad about it. I guess that was when he decided that it's time I learned the truth. Caledon Local 21 was a TV channel that ran locally and has previously established a little town in the Toronto Peel area in Ontario called Caledon. It was around for the span of about 2 years, from October 1997 to about September 1999, and the entire station was ran out of that rundown farmhouse me and my dad visited. It was all single-handedly produced by some freak who was never really known by anybody in that town. The channel was only made available on older TVs, because the signal was one only picked up by rabbit ears, which have a weaker frequency. This guy created all the shows on the channel, all of which were aimed at a child demographic. He was Mr. Bear, he was the mysterious cameraman, and he was the one operating the soup and the spoon. The reason he created that channel is a lot more disturbing than we originally thought. As you might have already guessed, he kidnapped the kids and kept them in his cellar. While looking back, I wouldn't blame you for assuming he's just some serial child rapist. There was something much worse he had in store for those kids. The day me and my dad came to visit him, he was actually on the run. According to the police, he fled the day before they started their investigation. Guess I wasn't the only one watching, huh? Update. December 2nd, 2009. I apologize for leaving you guys in the dark with all your questions. I haven't had access to this email account for some time. Anyway, I'd like to set some things straight about what I know. Now, back in October, I actually visited the house in Caledon being used to run Local 21. 2 women live there now, operating of all businesses a daycare. How ironic. Now, to answer the questions you guys emailed me. Question: who else watched Caledon Local 21? Answer: I know other people watched it for sure, including those kids who ended up in Mr. Bear's house. After a bit of Google searching, I found a Neo-Seeker forum of people discussing shows they remember aired on Channel 21, some of which I never knew about. The Fallen Angel is Life. I Am Real Life described it as a fairly boring show about a guy preaching and rambling in front of the camera about a fallen angel and how we must appease him and please him before it's too late. Essentially, it's some program akin to televangelism. Paint with the soul. Now, we saw this show brought up in a conversation among users I Am Real Life and Siggy92. They described it as Blair Witch-like, as it supposedly didn't consist of much else other than that cameraman wandering around the woods at night, aimlessly rambling to himself with what appears to be a new camcorder that had a night vision mode. Booby. The show is described as a very crudely made puppet show, which could barely be called a puppet show because there was no puppets on the hands or anything. Just a pair of hands emoting with little Pac-Man gestures. The show appeared to have been filmed in front of a grotesquely decayed wall. The hands always on a table covered up with a raggedy red cloth. Very low-budget stuff, obviously. The episode in particular described on the forums was the 6th episode called Together. It began with Booby struggling to get ketchup out of a bottle, even going so far as bashing himself into the bottom of the bottle violently for most of the episode's runtime. Finally, another hand came by and looked at Booby. Together, the other hand said, and it began beating the bottle as well, until some ketchup finally squirted out all over the table. Booby then stared at the ketchup for a few seconds before the camera turned towards him and Booby stared at it as it zoomed in on him for the remainder of the episode's runtime. This was supposedly a segment they aired semi-regularly on Channel 21, which kinda makes sense considering it sounds a lot like Soup and Spoon. The show in particular seemed to target the attention spans of very small children, as each episode is only a maximum of 5 minutes long. I'll go looking for these chats and see if I can get a link. Next question. What happened to Mr. Bear, or the Channel 21 showrunner? Answer. Unfortunately, I currently don't know. I would have stated if I did, but I have no idea where the guy is or whether he's still alive. Hopefully I'll get a more definite answer. Question. What did Mr. Bear do to those kids? Answer. This is by far the most common question I've been asked. I found this out in October as well, thanks to my dad's friend Mitch, who's a retired OPP. Apparently the showrunner took the kids out of the house to a forest nearby. What he did there, the police aren't exactly sure how it happened, but 16 bodies between the ages of 4 and 13 were found in a 15 by 15 foot ditch deep in the forest, all burnt to a fucking crisp. Mitch didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty explaining it, but I'm gonna see him next Thursday, so maybe then I can still ask him about it. That's all I got for now, so thanks for staying interested in my blog. I'll try to gather up as much information as I can for my next post. I've actually been pretty interested in it myself. It should be my right to know what the hell happened.